Okay, you're coming in. Okay, firstly, everyone, my apologies for being late. I had a technical glitch, and everything kind of collapsed and failed to function. One of those men say, "Gee, Batman, I'm glad the words I was saying then weren't recorded." Internally, of course, only internally. And I had to shut everything down, and my excellent computer man just said, "Oh, we're going to have to reboot the computer, boot your router, reboot the iPad." I said, "We're starting in 3 minutes. You said, just do it quickly. We'll do it," and we did. Sorry, that's why I'm a little bit late. So, it's all just righted itself again within the last few moments. So, just give me a moment to compose myself with some thoughts of the Bodhicharya Avatar horrors of hell. So it's very relaxing, isn't it? Here we go. Share screen. Odin Lavinia Wangdu, I've got host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you let co-host me? There we are. You know, people might say, what are the miseries of old age? And you know, among the dukkha, jarapi dukkha, jatipi dukkha, you know, birth is dukkha, you know. Jarapi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, old age is dukkha. And there are all the things that we have in the Buddhist scriptures about the miseries of old age. But back in those days, hello Mariano, back in those days, you see, they didn't have technology to cope with. If technology had existed in the Buddha's time, you know, old people trying to cope with youngsters' technology would have been at the forefront. Anyway, we're back now. So I'm nearly recomposed. Sorry. Boom, boom. Right, I see what I think is a new face, William Morgan. Welcome, William. So we're on verse 14. So, by the way, the whiteboard behind me was something I put there in an emergency just in case the technology didn't get sorted. But it's if we collapse again, I've got the whiteboard behind me. So, Manushyam Navamasadya Tara Dukkam Mahanadim Mudha Kalo Nanidraya Iyam Naur Durlabha Punah. I will read again. Manushyam Navamasadya Tara Dukkam Mahanadim Mudha Kalo Nanidraya Iyam Naur Durlabha Punah. Let's go first to, oops, sorry, more technology. This word asadya. Oh, before we go on to asadya, just earlier I was mentioning that victim of the Buddha, Jara, jarapi dukkha. In Pali, jarapi dukkha. In Sanskrit, jarapi dukkha. Jara, often translated as decay or old age. We have almost the same word in English when we talk about gerontology or geriatrics, from the Greek word geros, meaning old, geros, and that's the to go. We often find that between Sanskrit, Pali, early Indian languages, and Latin and Greek. So jara, you see, is the same jar of geriatrics. Back to where we were. Manushim navam asadya. Sorry, I've had a bit of a bumpy start. My mind is nearly settling down to its proper composure again. Having caught the human boat, or the boat of human life, tara dukkha mahanadim, cross the great river of dukkha. So let me go to iPad screen. Here we are, iPad screen. Now, one of the reasons I go on ad nauseam about roots and the importance of going back to the root of a word is that so many of these words, it just looks like a random collection of letters or sounds like a random collection of noises. But the sad, the root sad, means to sit. In fact, our word in the word saddle and settle and sit, they're all from that same root. And a plus sad, it is to sad, to sit up to go somewhere and sit down, to find your place to sit. Make a causative of it. Think of it as an at-sit. You at-sit, asad, almost the same, English to Sanskrit. Now, make a causative of it, asadayati. And that means, literally, it means to cause to sit. Okay, that's the crude meaning, sadayati, to make sit. But you've made it sit in the sense, now think of the extended sense, you've got it, you found it, it's there at your disposal. It's not running all over the place, running away, getting lost. It's sitting there at your disposal, asadayati. Now, if you look in the dictionary meaning, it will mean, the dictionaries will tell you it means to approach it, or to asadayati, to approach something or to find it. But in this context, it's much more the meaning of, in a case of a vehicle here, a mode of transport is a boat. It means having caught the boat, having got on the boat, having found your place on the boat. You're on the boat. Doesn't mean, because here, remember, this verse is directed towards human beings. So it's not a question of finding it. Oh, there it is on the horizon. No, you're on it. That's the whole point. As human beings, we have caught the boat. We have our seat. We are sitting on the boat. So manusham navam asadya, having caught this human boat. I'll come back to manusham navam in a moment. And then from the root tri, get back to this now, tara. Sorry, you meant to have my iPad. The root tri means to cross. Present tense, he, she, it crosses. Tarati. Cognate with trans, meaning across. Cognate also with our English word through. Because you go through something, you're crossing from one side of it to the other, going through it. So tarati. And as a verb, it simply means to cross from one side or the other. So, sorry, to cross from one side to the other. So, and nadi is a river. He crosses the river, then making the accusative, nadim tarati. Cross the river, the imperative, just the command, singular, second singular, cross off the, that is tara, simply tara, cross. Tara nadim, or tara dukkha mahanadim, cross the great river of dukkha. Manu is our archetypal, the mythical archetypal human being. A slight discussion arose during the last Pali class because I don't think I was being quite woke enough, because that sounds a bit, no. Manu, okay, man, it is, we are here talking about pre-differentiation. It's nothing to do with Manu, it's nothing to do with male or female, the idea of a human being, humanus. If ever I should or should even appear to say anything sexist, unwoke, politically incorrect, it's because I'm an old, no, it's because it's totally accidental. And for goodness sake, when you're dealing with Sanskrit and Pali, they hadn't got these ideas back then, you see. And did the Buddha get told off for saying that if he let women into the Sangha, the life of the Sangha would be shortened by 500 years? No, he did say that. I see a couple of expressions of horror. He did say that. Fortunately, he turned out to be wrong about that, because it's infused a vast amount of wonderful life and wisdom into the Sangha. So there we are. So Manu, and it's no coincidence, it's our word man, as in mankind, humankind. That's right, I was saying mankind, and I was told I ought to be saying humankind, that's it. Anyway, there we are, Manu, the archetypal man. There is an alternative, watch well here. There is an alternative version of that, now specifically relating to the first human being, the mythical first human being, the origin of mankind, which is manus, which is a consonant stem. So in other words, the accusative would be manusham and so on. The dative would be manusha. So the us there is part of the stem. Now, how do we get to this word? Pull back the screen here. Manushyam, from manus. Now, a funny thing happened, that I knew there had to be the rule about it, and proper name for the rule, in Panini, but Panini is just so badly indexed that, they've got the list of all the chapters, but in page order, you can't look things up in the various editions I have. You can't look it up alphabetically. And I was trying to do this about an hour ago. Can I find this in Panini where the rule is expressed? And I opened the book at random. And there it was, out of the thousands of pages, I opened it, and there it was. And normally I don't believe in guardian angels and that kind. There are moments in life when you do. My joy at finding it was tempered quite rapidly when I saw that the chapter in Panini is about 80 or so pages long with minute explanations of the rule. But I thought that it doesn't matter, we'll just plow slowly through. But essentially, this is such an important rule, and even though we haven't, so to speak, come to it yet, it doesn't matter, we've come to it now. You have this name, it's a personal name, Manus, and it applies to any kind of name. You can make an adjective, so that means man as in mankind. You can make an adjective out of it. Thank you, notepad, Manus. Thanks, Odin. I was forgetting again. By the way, anyone, please feel free to shout if I forget to show you my iPad. There's Manus. Remember, the us is part of the stem. It's not the nominative ending. It's part of the stem, as in manas. You know, manasi, manasam, manas. This is Manus. Let's make an adjective out. It's a noun. Let's make an adjective out of it. So we vriddhi, that we strengthen the first vowel for an just, in this case, just means a becomes a, and add an a. Manusha, noun manus, adjective manusha. We'll find this very, very frequently as we go along. So I was desperate to find a formulation of the rule in Panini. Okay, don't worry. It'll just take me a few years to plow through that chapter, but be patient. We will get there. Manusha, human. The strengthening of the vowels. For instance, the to o. We got these vowel gradations. It's called this is the neutral form. This is the guna form, the o and the o. This is the same e. Okay. Buddha means Buddha. Okay. How would you say the word Buddhist in Sanskrit? Not necessarily a person who practices, but for example, I was reading some recently about called Buddhist architecture, and it was in Sanskrit, and it was you change that first vowel, you strengthen it, Buddha to Bodha, Manus, Manusha, Buddha, Bodha. You see, let's make an adjective. One of the numerous ways of making an adjective out of a noun. So Manus, archetypal human, Manusha, human. There's a slight twist to it because sometimes the a can have be a ya. So Manushya. Manushya. Manusha is just an adjective. Manushya can either have the same meaning, but it can also mean now as an abstract noun, humanity. Manushya. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that in Manus, I have not put a dot under the S, but in Manusham, Manusha, Manushya, there is a dot under the S. That is because of a rule of Sandhi. And I do urge you, never try to learn all the rules of Sandhi in one go, unless you are of exceptional mental fortitude. Some of you may be, but even then it would test it. Anyway, we're learning that this one now. It's simply that when you get an S within a word, if the preceding vowel is any vowel other than a or a, the s becomes a sh. Simple as that. That is why it's manus. If, by the way, that doesn't apply if it's the last, if it's just the last letter in the word. So manus tarati, manus crosses, manus tarati. But within the same word now, add another vowel. Sorry, there's an u before it, is manusha, not manusa, manusha. So if you see an S, an ordinary s becoming a subdotted sh, it's simply by, or it's the same word, it's just an alternative pronunciation of it, which you have to do if the vowel before it is anything other than a or a. So with all this convolution, we now get manushya, which means human, relating to manus. Go back to the screen. So manushyam navamasadya taradukam mahanadim. So asadya, there we are, that one. So that's the absolutive. Sorry, I'm trying to move my page. There we are. Right. I've moved over. So we had asadayati. These verbs that end in an ayati, which is normally the causative form, they make their absolutive simply an ya. So it's asadya, having caught. So having caught the manushyam navam. Now the stem now means about. I think we discussed as well. It's the same as the, as the Latin word navis, meaning about. Navigation, nautical, the astronauts. So now means about. And it makes its nominative, adding the visarga, nominative, no. A little bit more sandhi now. Where you have the conjunct consonant, the au, followed by any vowel, it becomes av. So if you want to have now plus the accusative, so having caught the boat, you want to say now, the for the accusative, now asadya, that becomes navam. So no plus becomes navam. So navamasadya, having caught the boat. Manushyam navamasadya, having caught the human boat, which might translate the boat of human life. Now, you'll see here, Manushyam navam asadya. So my cursor is playing up. Manushyam navam asadya. This bit of text has given me a slight problem because the word now, according to all the dictionaries, is a feminine word. So I would have expected to see, but the ending is masculine there, as if navam was a masculine accusative. It should be am. I wondered if this was a misprint, and I've checked various editions, printed and online, and they all have it, the short which has puzzled me because it shouldn't be. Normally you puzzle things out if you stay with them long enough. This is just one where it hasn't worked. And all of the dictionaries give nav exclusively as feminine. It's just one of life's little mysteries. Maybe a scribe wrote it wrong once and then it just passed down into usage. I don't know. Because if you look at the second line, Get my cursor to work. Iyam naur durlabha. This is now again. Iyam naur. That's the visarga followed by a voiced consonant. Iyam nau durlabha becomes iyam naur durlabha. Those of you who jumped ahead with the grammar will see that iyam is the feminine form, this boat. Otherwise it would be imam navam, imam nau, but it's iyam, feminine form. So there we are. Manusha navam appears masculine in the first one and feminine in the second line. So I say normally I manage to puzzle everything out by looking through enough works of reference, but this one is just one of it's puzzled me. So Manushim Navmasadya, having caught the human boat. Tara dukkha mahanadim. Dukkha mahanadim. This is a compound. So we have nadi, nadi, meaning a river, feminine. The great river, compounded Mahanadi. Cross the great river, Tara Mahanadim. Note here that these two words are joined together into a compound, so the Maha doesn't decline, it doesn't alter for the feminine form. If you want to say a great river, you can either say Mahanadi, joining the adjective to the noun to make one word, or you can have Mahati as a separate word, Mahati Nadi. Exactly the same meaning, it's just a matter of style. Remember, when you compound words together, only the last word declines and alters according to gender, number, and case, with some very few exceptions that are actually very easy to learn but needn't detain us now. Now, dukkha, again, now it's a three-element compound. Dukkha Mahanadi, the sorrow great river. How do we know, with Dukkha Mahanadi, the great river of sorrow, how do we know that it's not the river of great sorrow? The reason we know, and this rule almost always works, oddly enough, and very helpfully as well, in Sanskrit, the same as in English. The most important element, the central element of a compound, is normally the last word. So you take the last word and then work backwards. Okay, Dukkha Mahanadi. Start at the last word. What's he talking about? He's talking about a nadi, a river. Now look the next word back. Mahanadi. Okay, a great river. Fine, a great river. Have you any more to say about this great? Yes, it's a Dukkha Mahanadi. It is a great river of what? Of dukkha, of sorrow. You can say the river of great sorrow, but that would be Mahadukkha Nadi would mean the river of great sorrow, as opposed to Dukkha Mahanadi, the great river of sorrow. You'll get used to these compounds. There are various different types of compounds. But interestingly enough, they fairly closely reflect the kinds of compounds that you find in English, where you can work them out by going backwards. and an example that's very easy to follow. We can cope with fairly long compounds in English, and we know exactly what we mean. And an example that I've given before, I can't remember to this group, is the railway station car park ticket machine. You know, how many elements there? Railway, car park. It's a 6-element compound there. But but in Sanskrit, as in English, we start back to work. What do you talk about? A machine. Okay, what kind of machine? A ticket machine, fine. Where? In a park. What kind of park? A car park. So you work backwards. And you find exactly what it means. It's the machine that sells tickets in the car park of the station. Which station? The railway station. That's the good news, that you can do, and usually get away with it. You can do exactly the same thing in Sanskrit. You can analyze a compound by working backwards. So manusham navamasadya tara dukkha mahanadim. And the im at the end, of course, because it's the accusative, it's the object of the imperative verb tara, to cross. Now to the second line. Mudha, mudha, kalo nanidraya yam naur durlabha punah. The mudha, deluded, translated as fool, but deluded. Again, don't run away with the idea it just means deluded. There's a lot more to it than that. And we have the 3 great fetters, 3 great defilements, moha, lobha, and dvesha. The dvesha, by the way, in Pali is dosa. So, lobha, often translated as, I forget, what order do they go in? Bhante, please, Bhante Yushi, what is the standard order? It's not moha, lobha, is it? There's a standard order in which these things are normally recited.
Mahadukha nadi. Mahadukha nadi. Is that what you expected?
Oh, no, I was just thinking these 3 words, moha, lobha, and dvesha.
Moha.
They're normally given in a certain order. I can't remember what order. Is it moha, dvesha, lobha?
I see.
Lobha, moha, dvesha, dvesha, lobha, moha?
I see. Lobha, usually lobha comes first.
Okay,
lobha comes
good.
First.
Lobha, moha, dvesha, is it?
Yes.
Which one comes second?
Yes, I think so.
Lobha, moha, dvesha. Okay. Thanks very much.
Lobha, dvesha, moha.
Okay.
Lobha, yeah, I think so.
Oh, thank you. I've got a question here about Nadi and Nadi. Nice one. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that, Oscar. So, thank you very much, Bhante. Thanks for that help. So, moha, often translated as delusion, but it's more than delusion. It's the entire cognitive defect deep in our human nature. That is moha, not seeing things as they truly are. And is moha, and it's from the root muh. For the want of a better word, let's use deluded. But we bear in mind it's got a much wider meaning than that. It goes to the very core of Buddhist teaching. Muh. We want to make a past participle out of it. Somebody who is deluded. So we're going to do muh plus ta. this final letter H, not the visarga, it's the full consonantal H, can go a little bit funny sometimes when it's at the end of the word and when it's combining with an ending like the ta. So it actually, and it lengthens the previous vowel. So muhta becomes mudha. The explanation for that is, sorry chaps, it just does. So the mudha, past participle from the root mu, just you're deluded, you deluded person. And if we look back to the text, mudha, we see there mudha in its stem form. In other words, without any declensional ending, not mudha for masculine, mudham, mudhena, and so on, just mudha. That's the vocative. As we were saying, sukumara, you delicate thing. This is mudha. You're talking to the Buddha, oh Buddha, just the same as the stem form. Mudha, means you deluded person, mudha, vocative. Kalo nanidraya. Sorry, I'll break off there to go to Oscar Ram's question. And the question was whether nadi was the same as the prana channels. Your nadi shodhana, the purification of the nadi. No, it's misleadingly similar. And if you write it in transliteration without the diacritics, you can make it look the same. In fact, they are, despite their superficial similarity, they are in fact two entirely separate words. So nadi just means to revert that nadi, first long a, and with a retroflected d, nadi is these are the prana channels. Superficial similarity to Nadi River, but that's all. There's actually no connection at all. Anyway, thanks for that question, Oscar. That was a good one. So the Nadi Shodhana. That's a particular kind of breathing technique, up through one, out through the other, and so on. The purification of the nadis, the channels. The Muda, you deluded thing, kalo nanidraya. Nidraya, nidra. Nidra, sleep. There is a root. See, nidra. Some of you may have heard of yoga. So nidra yoga and yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is a certain kind of yoga practice where you go down into a sleep. Thank you. Reminder about the notepad again. Sorry about that, chaps. I forgot to say nadi river nadi shodha nidra. Now, yoga nidra, a yoga sleep. In fact, here we are again. We use almost the same word in English. If you're drowsy, sent the root dra to sleep, drowsy. Also a dream comes from that same root. In Russian, to drowse, dremat. So this it's remained in modern languages as well, and of course the Latin dormitory, dormant, and so on. So nidra, into sleep. The idea is falling asleep, going into sleep, down into sleep, nidra. It is, now is not the time to sleep. In Sanskrit, you say it is not the time of sleep. You use the genitive. Kala, masculine is time. Kalo, time not of sleep. Genitive nidraya. So Kalo, time, na, not, nidraya, of sleep. It's not the time for sleep, not the time to go to sleep now. Mudha, mudha kalo na nidraya. You fool, now is not a good time to fall asleep. Iyam naur durlabha punah. Nidraya, in this verse, you will see, which is going to be interesting now. I've had several text reminders from Odin about showing you my iPad. Let's see if I remember without a reminder this time when we finish the text. So, mudkalo nanidraya. Nidraya. Sorry, I've done subdotted H. Rule of Sandhi, the ending long with visarga, followed by a voiced, by another vowel, also a vowel or a voice consonant. Here we have iam, just the, iPad, iam. The visarga drops off. Kalo nanidraya iam naur durlabha punah. Now here we are back to the puzzlement, but here no is properly is a feminine, treated as a feminine, because the imam is masculine, iyam meaning this is the feminine form. So iyam no, this boat. Durlabha. Now here we have the visarga, no, preceded by a vowel other than a or a, and so it changes to a r before the following voiced consonant. That's why we get naur, sorry. No, iam nau durlabha become iam naur durlabha. Again, sorry chaps, that's just part of a large lot of kind of front-end learning you have to do. As I repeat, the rules are very regular, so once you've learnt them, you've got them for all time. So iam naur durlabha punah. Difficult to obtain, durlabha. This prefix dur or dush or du, it's all the same. It means difficult or bad. It's actually cognate, directly cognate with the Greek dis, as in wrongly or badly, dysfunctional, and so on. Dysphoria, feeling bad. In modern Greek, dyskolos means difficult to do. Mariano, did you tell me there was a word in the Venetian dialect, dyskolo, meaning a naughty child, which actually is borrowed from in Venetian dialect directly from Greek, just meaning difficult, dyskolo. So the primary meaning of it is something like bad, but it can also mean not necessarily bad, just difficult. So the root lub means to get or to obtain. And it's interesting how these roots survive into modern times with slight changes of meaning. because if you need to get something, you get something by your labor. In Latin, labor, laborare, that same lab is from that root lab. So in other words, in Sanskrit and Pali, it means to get or to obtain. In Latin, it is the work you need to do in order to get or obtain something. It's the labor. Now, of course, in modern English, labor. That's that same word. But remember, Sanskrit and Pali means to obtain. So if something is durlabha, just means it's difficult to obtain, difficult to find. They're meaning rare. It's a rare thing. This boat of human life is a rare thing. Durlabha punah, difficult to get again. In other words, you might not get a second chance. So iyam naur durlabha punah, this boat is difficult to get, difficult to find again. The root punah, sorry, not root, the word punah is originally punar. The punar just means again. With a metathesis, that's a switching round of a couple of the consonants. It comes via Greek into modern English as in a palindrome. Doing the same way. Palin is the Greek for again. Same as from the r and the n became switched around, palin, but it's that same word. So think of punah, think of palindrome, palin, and again road, following the same road again, a palindrome. So iyam naur durlabha punah, this boat is difficult to obtain again. Just as a little aside, as a very primitive root, ka, very primitive root means space. And we know for let's look at and ga, a ga, space goer, something that travels through space. Not outer space, just means a bird, kaga. Space or place with the prefix du, dukkha, Pali you just double the K, dukkha. Dukkha, the original concept is a bad space or a bad place. The very wide meaning of dukkha, from the dukkha that I was suffering just before this lesson began when my technology collapsed, to other forms of great pain. It just means, so the idea is just you're in a bad space, not in the place you want to be. That is dukkha, or the etymological origin of the word dukkha. And the opposite, of course, is sukha. Sukha, often translated as happiness, but etymologically just means a good space, a good place to be. Is there a bad place or a good place? Sukha and dukkha. Oh, and another example of difficult than the root kri, meaning to do. Sukara, good do, that just means easy, not good to do, doing good things, but it's easy to do. So just as du can mean bad or difficult, so su can mean good or easy. So if something is sukara, it's easy to do. And by contrast, dushkara, difficult to do. And indeed, it's this word dushkara that actually then appears in Greek as Dískolos. Dushkara dískolos. So when the Venetians are talking to a naughty boy and going un discolo, you see, just remember the Sanskrit origins of dushkara, difficult. So this brings us to the end of verse 14. I'll just recite it again slowly. And if there are any questions, please give them. So, let me call up the text again. Here we are. Manushyan navamasadya tara tuhka mahanadim mudha kalo nanidraya yannaur durlabha punah. Again, Manushyan navamasadya tara duhka mahanadim mudha kalo nanidraya yannaur durlabha punah. Now, any questions arising? Yes, is that a question from you, Mariano? Okay, unmute. There we are.
There we are. It is just a rabbit hole. I'm sure it nothing to do with it. But you know how we say sugar in Veneto, we say sucaro, which almost sounds like a make it good because it is.
Oh, sucaro, make it good. Yes. almost too good to be true.
Good, yeah.
Yes. I fear, however, I think the more correct is from the Arabic word sukkar.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
It's sukkar, Arabic for sugar, which became zucchero and then sugar. Anyway, actually, on that rabbit hole, I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole because although etymologically it's not right, there is another very interesting one to do with sweetness. We have the root ad. Sorry, let me go to the root ad. A very primitive root. It means to eat, and it is cognate with our English word eat and the Latin edere, and so on. Ad, to eat. Su, and lengthen the verb, make a noun of this, noun or an adjective. Suada, literally good eating, good to eat, nice to eat. So, sweet. Watch this now. Suada, the suada by Sunday, the u followed by an a becomes a v. So suada means the word. And is it any coincidence? Our English word sweet, su, eat, suada, sweet, su. So whenever we talk about sweet, we're using this prefix su, meaning good, and it has stayed with us in that word sweet. Su, eat, sweet. Sadly, nowadays, not many sweet things are that good to eat. But back, the very, very ancient times, when a sweet fruit was a giver of energy, that's why it's something really, hey, got something really sweet here. So that's the suada, good to eat. Since we've got a few minutes, and since it won't be very long, since you really will have to do a bit more, get to know the Devanagari, shall we analyze the Devanagari script of a few words here? I'm just trying to gauge on those faces that are visible the level of enthusiasm. Okay, that's better. Thank you. Because the level of enthusiasm I was seeing a moment ago was when I unfortunately trod on a poor snail yesterday. Okay. There we are. That's better now. Let's look at a bit of Devanagari. Of this same verse, here we are. So, Manushyam Navamasadya. Let's look at a very, very simple, let's look at Navamasadya, which I shall, my cursor is giving me problems. Navam Asadya. Okay. Right, so we now get back to it. I've just written a N there. Again, as always, the characteristic part of the letter first. What I've just written here, that is just the characteristic part of the N. And it's got the upright and the crossbar. Normally, when you're writing Devanagari, you write the crossbar when you come to the end of a word. So you wouldn't write it like that, and then that, and then that, and then that. And so you'd write, and so on, like, and put the crossbar at the end. It's a matter of style. It makes it neater. It's not wrong to do it otherwise. But I think every time I've seen Indians writing, or anybody skilled in writing a Devanagari, put the crossbar at the end of when you come to the end of the rest of the verb. So na. Now this is navam asadya. So you just write that long line, that upright, that makes the a. Remember, a on it, this is an a. And a. So asadya, let's write asa there, that is asa. But remember, following a consonant, it's just that upright on its own. So this little one, this upright bar there represents the a. So na, no, the v, nav. What I've written here is nava. We want to get navamasadya, now m. Now I'm going to write this in a way that is, it shouldn't be written, but just to explain what's happening. The word I've written here now is navam. This is navam. And this little stroke under the M is to indicate that there's no vowel, the virama, resting or stopping, navam. Asadya. Okay, now a new word, a, sa, dya. Now, in the early stages of reading things in Devanagari, it is a rich source of confusion. Be well alert to it. That where you see this m in a word, followed by another vowel, it might look like part of the next word. Now, in Devanagari, but it's not. In Devanagari, when you're writing navamasadya, you write it there. See how I've highlighted it as navam, but the next word joins to it, navamasadya, as if it's part of the same word, even though in fact it's two words. That's just how it's written. So back to the iPad now. This navam asadya, we have to write like this. You see I've written navam, navama sadya. So be wary here. I've ringed it, this ma, that the M belongs to the previous word and the A belongs to the following word. I wish they didn't do it like that, but and if there were anything I could do about it, I promise you I would, but I can't. You will incidentally find in many modern Sanskrit texts that are designed for learning purposes, and for example, simple stories in Sanskrit told for children or even for adult learners. I've got several books here with these stories told in simple form. They will often not apply the sandhi. They will break the words down and write them separately. It just makes it easier to analyze. So if this verse were being written, for a modern learner, it would often be written in the way that I'm ringing it now. Navam asadya, written as separate words. But most texts aren't so helpful, and they do it in the traditional way.
Can I ask something, James?
Please.
Because the dia there is really another character, isn't it? I mean, it has got very little resemblance to dh and then ya. So how many different characters do you really have in Sanskrit?
I don't actually know the number, but it's not that many. You see, from blocked pronunciation of Vipassana, Vipassana, depending on source language, maybe it'll be class. Vipassana, okay, I'll deal with that in a second. Okay, da, this is da. And this is a ya. Okay, there are some that just completely change their shape. There are a few that slightly change their shape. That's why they're dia. You can see the beginning of the da there, and you can see this characteristic shape of the ya there. So it's just kind of merged into one. So I haven't written that well. Dia. This is one of these intermediate ones. The shape is still there. If you go into soft focus, I can see a bit of some da and a bit of a ya. Mostly it's entirely clear. Mostly. There are some that are really not clear. For instance, k plus sh. That is, it's just written like that, which is just with the original shape of the letter is just lost. You can also be written like that. But there aren't many like that. There are very, very few. And jnya, which is j plus nya, which comes like that. But don't worry, there are very few like that. Mostly they're entirely transparent. For example, if you want to write the word astu, you can see there that I've started to write the S, as. But because it's joined as a conjunct, I've now written a th. So that is asta. If I wrote it like this, that would be asata. But because the st are joined together into one conjunct consonant, you join them together in writing in the same way that you do in speech, asta. So let it be astu. That's astu. Now, in the last few minutes, I've got a question. From BBC's pronunciation unit. For vipassana, vipashyana, depending on source language, maybe you could help the class with it today. Yes, of course. Present stem from drish. This is one of these irregular verbs, drish. To see, it makes its present stem in pashya. It's just a bit irregular. The present stem is from a different root. The example I give is in English. We have our verb to go, but for the past tense, we don't say goed. We use an entirely different root and we say went. There are a few verbs that do that, very, very few. The most common one is drish and pashya. So pashya. Seeing, it means to see. In Sanskrit, pashyana is a verbal noun meaning seeing. In fact, it's a back derivation from Pali, but it means seeing, a pashyana. And vipashyana, the idea of separation or penetration, vipashyana, insight, seeing into something. Now, in Sanskrit, we have three separate sounds: the s, the palatal sh, shuddha, shodhana, shubha, and we've got the retroflex sh. They all, in Pali, they're all just one s. So Pali does not have a sh or a sh. So that's why what is vipashyana in Sanskrit becomes vipassana in Pali. And there are two rules at play here when we translate the sh into Pali, is that the sh becomes a s and the conjunct consonant becomes a doubled. So vipassana is really just the Pali version of the Sanskrit vipashyana, from the stem pashya, to see. I'll write it for you in Devanagari. Now, something you'll get used to. The word begins with a consonant followed by E. You want to write V, and you might be tempted to write it begins with a V, so I'll write a V. No, because it's a short E. That's the tricky one. The E is written before its consonant. You write it V. This is a V. Pa. I'll write it in Sanskrit, not Pali. V, pa, sha. Now, here, that is the letter sh. Now here we can see very clearly here, no problems there. Simply write the characteristic part of the sh immediately followed by the y, and you can see quite clearly that is a shya. There's one of those ones where the ligature, as it's called, the combining of the consonants is fully transparent. So I hope that is clear enough. Hopefully you've all read what I've just written. This is an S, sa. Okay. That's the D. Sadhu, 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 sadhu. So I've just got one more question in from Odin. I think we're asking for Buddhists, how are they meant to be pronouncing it? S or sh for the Theravada Mahayana. The Theravada Mahayana. Okay. I'll go back to first. Which language are you speaking? Are you speaking Pali or Sanskrit? If you're speaking Pali, it's vipassana. If you're speaking Sanskrit, vipashyana. So it's not so much a question of your affiliation to one school or another. It's which language you're speaking. That's the, as far as I know, that's the only criterion. For example, the word for pure in Sanskrit, shuddha. And Pali suddha. Purified, visuddha. In Sanskrit would be vishuddha. Make a noun out of it, visuddhi. Make a noun, visuddhi. purification. The great work with the Gosha, Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, which in Sanskrit would be Vishuddhimarga. Right, that brings us to the end of our time. Hopefully I will be seeing 2 or 3 of you for the Pali that starts in 15 minutes. So next time round, we'll be back to. So come on, I can't take turn. Sorry.
Thank you.
So next time round, then we'll be back to Thomas Eginus. Okay, wonderful. So until next week, and I will see a few of you in a few minutes. Okay, thank you then. Thank you.